Hello, teachers, colleagues, pianists, and friends. Today we're talking about how to teach two minuets by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. They sound like this. If we haven't met before, my name is Jana Williamson, and welcome to my home piano studio in the suburbs of Chicago. These are two very interesting pieces, and I'm putting them together because they originally were one piece. Mozart, at a very young age, I believe 8, wrote a sonata for piano and violin with 4 movements, the third movement of which is the Minuet 1 and 2, and that's where these minuets come from. And in that case, you would play the first minuet, then you would play the second minuet, and then you would da capo and go back and play the first minuet again. At some point later, someone decided that these should be solo piano minuets, primarily for student study. They are great study pieces for student introduction to Mozart's style and the graceful classical era minuet. Since they have a lot of the same concerns, I decided to put them in one video, and we can apply a lot of this discussion of Mozart style, classical style, and minuets specifically to both pieces. The C major is easier than the F major, and so they don't show up on the same exact levels of various syllabi leveling, and they don't show up in the same intermediate collection. So I'm going to put a long list of editions in the description of this video. Today I'm looking at these in Jane McGraw's Classics Alive books. So the C major is in the red book, book 1, and the F major is in the green book, book 2. Part of the other reason I decided to highlight these, besides the fact that I just taught the C major a few weeks ago to one of my young students, is that I just did a workshop for my Patreon partners a couple of weeks ago all about Mozart for piano students. We talked about his biography, about classical style, about general teaching concerns in Mozart specifically and this time period generally. And then we did a brief overview of music appropriate for student study, including these minuets all the way up to the sonatas that I would teach to an early advanced student, a standard pre-college student. If you're interested in that, click the link in the description. It's just $7 to join at the partner level, and you have access to a lot of exclusive content there, including several workshops like that one on Mozart. A few general main features of these two minuets would, of course, be the minuet dance. And this is something we have to discuss with our students because nobody in 2025 is dancing the minuet. It's one of the only dance forms that carries over from the Baroque period. You know, think about all the dance forms like allemands and gigs and courants and, yes, minuets that Bach included in his French suites and many, many other composers used in many other contexts. The minuet is one of the only ones that survives into the classical era, and it continues with this beautiful, graceful style. I think because the minuet has a bit of a simple feel, that's one of the reasons that classical composers still used it. They were aiming for more balanced, cleaner sound, slower harmonic progression than what we experienced in the Baroque. And certainly with all Mozart, we get this refined quality, even though we know he was a funny person in real life from the letters that he wrote. But we get this refined quality, almost this sense of aristocracy. And one of my teachers frequently, when talking about Mozart, would say, it's like a glass of champagne, that clear, light color with bubbles and crispness. And so for that reason, there's always this elusive quality about Mozart. And one of the reasons it makes it so difficult to teach students, it looks so easy on the page, so simple. The harmony is simple. The rhythms are relatively simple. We use lots of the standard chords and fingering patterns that we know, and Mozart truly is very pianistic. It feels good to play. But to play it stylistically well in a way that truly brings it to life does take maturity and plenty of practice. And I'm not sure my students always get there, but my hope is to help them arrive somehow at that style, even if they're playing at the early intermediate level. So with minuets, we have 3/4 time, a slight emphasis on beat 1, this feeling of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we certainly find that in both of these. We must pay attention to articulation. So if I start with the minuet in C major, the most notable articulation here is the two-note slur. And most editions that you see will have quite a few two-note slurs in both the right hand and the left hand, particularly even just the very beginning. Maybe not on that octave, and if you are working with a younger child with a smaller hand, they might need to bounce that because of that reach. Now, just to say, because this is such an interesting piece that was originally written for piano and violin, you do find little minor differences across different editions. So your edition may have different articulation and other markings than mine does. And I would encourage you to consult a variety of editions so that you can see what is common across the board. In general, when we have the quarter notes in the left hand, such as measure 5 through 8, we want to play those with a light detached touch, much like what we did in the Baroque, where we're thinking of that Baroque cello line with short bows. Not pizzicato like a true staccato, but just short or detached bows. And if you watch Baroque ensembles, you can very clearly see the cellist and string bass player doing this. So if I demonstrate that in measure 5 of the C major minuet, right there, the tonic, dominant, tonic. I always call the minuet pattern with my students because it's a pattern that happens in almost every minuet, and it happens in many, many other pieces as well. So if they can clearly see that octave with the fifth in between, it's a pattern that they can quickly recognize and not have to read note by note. So if I combine the right hand beautiful little phrases, 2 bars, 2 bars, and then 4 bars, with that left hand first doing 2-note slurs and then doing the portato or detached left hand, it would sound like how I demonstrated it. Now that brings me to that interesting dissonant note, the F sharp in the right hand, which is an appoggiatura against the G. That creates a major seventh, which I think is quite possibly the most dissonant interval that we hear in Western music. Besides, of course, if you invert it to a half step, that's very dissonant. But students oftentimes balk, especially when they're putting this together for the first time and they don't go on, they just stop there. And they say, that sounds really wrong. And I say, but all the better once you resolve it to the G, you'll be so satisfied. And really, that's one of the main things to get our students to listen to, is when things feel dissonant or tense, or to use a kid word, cringy. If it sounds wrong and then it resolves to something right, you're really calling their ears and their brains to an understanding of what is consonant and dissonant. And this is the perfect example for a place to do that. I want to give a quick note that these are both included in an old Alfred publication, Willard Palmer's Mozart, An Introduction to His Keyboard Works. And it's important to note that for that C major, he includes a lot of ornamentation possibilities for the right hand, which you would do on the repeats. These same ornaments, or ones that are very similar, are included in a recording that I found of piano and violin, and I'll be sure to link that in the description as well. So you can go listen to that. And for a student who has the technical facility, who might be an especially creative student, you could have them work on some of these ornaments, or you as the teacher could simply demonstrate them and show them the possibility. It's important to note that Mozart was not only a child prodigy, but a master virtuoso improviser. That's important for our students to know, that part of that whole child prodigy story is that he could improvise on the spot and spontaneously compose based on themes. And so this would have been normal fare on the repeats to do some of this improvisation. So I'll just show some of the ornamentation here. to play many of those. Now, if we go on to the F major, the second minuet, we have a little bit more rhythmic intricacy, which I think is one of the reasons that makes this difficult. And we have more varied articulation between the hands, although you do certainly see that in the C major as well. It starts with this back and forth, left, right, which is one of the most fun parts of this, I think. It sounds almost like you've got a ping pong ball going back and forth, or two people interrupting each other. So right away, keeping that steady can be difficult simply because of the coordination of the hands, as well as just the fact that there's not one hand keeping a stable rhythm. Then we go on, and this next phrase from measure 5 to 8 is a little easier to keep in time because the left hand has a constant stream of eighth notes. Very important to use rotation as those intervals get larger. This is where we have the varied articulation. So as your student is learning this, have them exaggerate light right hand bounces, like really take their hand off the keys while the left hand continues legato. This is a process for convincing your brain that the two sides of your body are going to do two different things. That's how I always tell my students. It's not something wrong with them if they can't get the articulation right first. It's that their brain hasn't sorted it out and given the correct signals to each hand to do something different. The last rhythmic issue is that we switch to 16th notes in measure 9, followed by a quarter note beat in measure 10. So we've gone from eighths, this medium rhythmic movement, to 16ths, this fast rhythmic movement, to quarters, very slow rhythmic movement. So that requires a lot of conscious thought and discipline for a student to keep in one steady pulse. I would definitely be preparing a student for a piece like this ahead of when I assigned it, either through just plain old rhythmic activities, tap backs or tapping rhythms on cards or in a sight reading book or whatever the curriculum is that you want to use ahead of time, to be feeling the quarter note pulse and then dividing that both into twos and fours. Thankfully, we don't have any threes, so it's just the twos and the fours. But if I demonstrate that from measure 8, that measure 8 can feel very slow once you get there. And of course, your student's not going to be playing that fast when they're first working on this, and it can make it even more slow feeling at the end of that section. We have that same dissonance of that Appoggiatura, which is again so cringy and then so delightful once it resolves. Minuets and all other Baroque dances are in binary form, meaning there's an A section with a repeat followed by a B section with a repeat. It's probably the easiest form to see, and piano students tend to play a lot of these little dance forms, so they get very used to it. 99% of the time, there's a problem with doing the repeat or going on to the next section in time. So it is important to sort out that you're going to have two different things. Going from measure 10 here back to measure 1 is different than going from measure 10 here, obviously, on to measure 11. And you just want to do little spot practice on that. You could do 2 measures if you want to continue working on that last section. And then just play the first measure, and then compare that, play that back to back with the other version. And then, of course, the last one to do would be measure 21 and 22 back up to measure 11. That has a much bigger movement for the left hand, from 2 octaves from F to F, and so it takes time for a student to feel that big leap. I would certainly practice finding that leap by looking, but then also, can a student do it with his or her eyes closed? Because you just don't have time to look at all of the things all at once. And of course, with any leap, you spend time thinking about which hand do I need to look at? Where do I need to prepare myself mentally? It's not the right hand in this case. The right hand stays pretty much in the same place. When your student's performing this, they should have a tiny little breath at those repeat signs. It should not feel like it slams into the next section, but it can't be a full beat. It can't be a all-out pause and then go on. And that's one of those sophisticated aspects to classical style, to Mozart in particular, is feeling that breath while also staying in tempo. And it might be just worth having a conversation, even at this level, certainly when your student is working on the sonatas, about Mozart's legacy as an opera composer. That is his main legacy. And the thing that he was known for, besides being an amazing pianist during his lifetime, he was known as a composer of operas. And so everything relates to the voice. So you could even come up with words to sing and pretend breathing, or just sing on neutral syllables like doobie doobie doo or ba ba ba. So to demonstrate that, you know, there was a breath in there, there's a little bit of time, but it certainly wasn't anything close to a full quarter note beat. All right, I hope that helps. Please do check out, I'm gonna put a lot of links in the description of this video, so check them all out. Patreon membership, editions, the recording of the violin and piano version of this, and I wish you all the best in your teaching and playing.